Welcome to the Daily Commercial Forum. I am your host, Sandy Moore. We are encountering Florida's wildlife more often than ever before. For most people, observing our native wildlife is an enjoyable experience. But when any animal causes damage or attempts to share your living space, the thrill can quickly become dangerous. Today, we will talk about how we can safely coexist with many different wildlife species that we have here in Lake County. Our guests from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission are Joy Hill, the Public Information Director for the Northeast Region, and Officer Chad Weber. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's start out by talking about what are typical encounters, wildlife encounters that people may have.
Well, typically in Lake County, mostly probably going to be alligators, which any body of water in the state of Florida is likely to have an alligator. Also in Lake County, we border Ocala National Forest, so black bears, and as the population grows, more encounters with wildlife are going to take place.
And we were talking, I know that I've had wildlife encounters with, for example, we had on our back porch a thing of food for some cats, and we had a raccoon and a possum come onto our back porch and get in a little fight. So that was a nice little encounter with.
Right, and those kinds of encounters are very common, and the problem with those kinds of encounters is that you see one little raccoon comes to your back, and at first it's really cute. Take pictures. Wow, look at the raccoon. Everybody's real quiet, and then the next thing, a couple of raccoons come in, and you're still okay with that. Look how they wash their food, and take more pictures. And then, I'm not lying, the next time they come in, there are 25 of them. And the problem with that is
it's
that
like seagulls at the beach. Not a good.
Yes, they congregate. Exactly, they congregate, and unfortunately, when animals congregate unnaturally like that, because that is not a natural behavior, you can increase the risk of disease, and of course, situations where people are going to get bitten by them or something like that. So we definitely, we actually have a rule that prohibits feeding raccoons because of the danger that they can, the disease that they can carry.
Well, I can assure you that it was not a cute little scene on my back porch with the raccoon and the possum.
And a lot of the wildlife, they're very opportunistic. Instead of having to work for their food, if they're getting a handout, even if you take the food away, they'll still come there every day because they've known to get food there. So.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about some of the, how, if we can understand the behavior of wildlife, how that can maybe keep us safe, or also maybe allow us to enjoy it more. Because I know one of my favorite things to do, we live in Lake County, is to go out on our boat and really look for gators in the water. But, what things how can we better understand them so we can appreciate them?
As an average citizen, without being a biologist, it's really hard to know the behavior of a wild animal. An alligator could be curious at one moment and then go from that to wanting to eat you. So it's better just to stay away, watch from a distance.
They're very unpredictable. Wild animals are unpredictable, and really they're not out to get us, but they are wild, and they do have survival instincts. And when alligators, on the rare occasions that we have bites, they're not really generally, they're not going after a person. We are not their prey, but they don't see the difference between a human and, say, some food a human might be handing it or has been handing it over a period of time, and they come to expect that. And as Chad said, most wildlife is very opportunistic, and if it's easy and it's a perpetual source of food, they're going to just keep coming back, and that's when we have problems.
Well, and I know living in Florida my whole life, that was the biggest rule from the get-go, is you don't feed the alligators because of that.
Absolutely, they just become more familiar, and you know what? Sometimes it's even more than feeding. We have so many communities that are right on the water, either on canals or on the lakes, that the alligators become, people tiptoe around, and the alligators just become used, and all wildlife become used to seeing people as a non-threatening entity. They're not afraid of the people are, be quiet. And so when that happens, you get the same kind of lack of fear from the alligators and other wildlife, and they become very bold. And so, what we like to say is, don't make them really welcome there.
Yeah, alligators, obviously, it's against the law to feed alligators in the state of Florida. And a lot of the calls I've been on, you can tell when an alligator's been fed. If you stand at the edge of the bank, it'll swim right up to you, waiting for a handout. Same like, well, if you go to a park and you feed the ducks, and they follow you all the way. That's how the alligators start to act. And typically they start associating humans with food, and that's when it becomes dangerous. If somebody falls in the water or things like that.
So now you say don't make them feel comfortable, or don't. What would you do? I mean, I have my mother-in-law lives on a canal, for example. There's, I know that every once in a while they'll see an alligator, little alligators up there. What do they do to make them not comfortable?
I would just make a lot of noise and just make it so that if they start approaching, yell at them. They can hear, they can detect all of that. You don't need to start spraying them with water. That probably wouldn't bother an alligator very much, being sprayed with water. But you just, make a lot of noise. Just get out of here, gator. Just don't tiptoe around so that they just see there is no threat whatsoever. They need to see us as a threat. And, we
bow up a little bit when you're...
Yeah, well, exactly, because alligators, generally, one of the reasons we're not prey items for alligators is because we are really tall. We're vertical. And alligators are horizontal, so that when they're from that perspective and looking up at, say, a 5 or 6 foot tall person, that is a huge adversary, and
they have no idea how scared we are.
They have no idea how scared we are, but that's an adversary that they can't really mess with that. The difference when you see a little child and they're looking up at that, well, that could be a little deer, or for a big alligator,
right,
or a little hog or something like that. And that's a prey size. Same thing with dogs and pets and other things like that. So you have to consider the size and the time of day. That matters.
Time of day, I mean, obviously you don't want to be water skiing or swimming in a lake when it's around dusk or early morning. They're typically more active during those hours, and they're feeding and things like that.
That's when is that when they're looking for their food? Is that?
Yes. And also, like she said, alligators, they should be very scared of humans because they think that we're a lot bigger than they are. So if you approach an alligator and it swims away or splashes, that's usually a good alligator. You don't want them near you. So
that's right. If you walk out, say someone living on a canal and their dock right there, and you walk out on your dock or your deck, that alligator should go under and be gone. The one that sits there and looks and
like
just isn't afraid, begging or just sitting there like, really? That's called aggression in an alligator, because we're up here again, they're down there, and they should be saying, see ya.
Get away.
So an alligator's got, and unfortunately, Sandy, we have this a lot in these communities because we know that people just toss something in. Oh, let's not forget about people who are feeding fish and turtles.
Yes, that's a good point.
As well.
Right, and we need people to make that connection that the fish and turtles know that you're feeding them, but then the alligators, either they're coming up and feeding on that, or they're feeding on those fish and turtles that are congregated.
So inadvertently, you're still feeding them.
You're feeding gators, and you can argue all day long that you're not, but in fact you are, and creating a problem.
Now, if that question would be, if there's no gators around us, if there's no gator seeing that you're feeding the fish and turtle, is that still a problem, or
it will happen?
Just if, okay.
It is inevitable. It will happen if you're in an area where you've got fish and turtles, unless it's the smallest of little pond, on a little pond that you've built.
Right.
If you're in a canal, you're on a lake, it's going to happen. So I know people like to do that, but it's really a smart idea not to. They may be aware.
Makes fishing very easy for later, if you're feeding the fish.
Oh, when you're feeding the fish, I get that, but maybe some natural attractants.
Right.
They plant the right kinds of course, I think there may be permits and things involved with planting things,
right,
but we look towards the more natural approaches. There's plenty of stuff out there.
Well, I think it's good that you say that, because that's something that I don't think most people think about, because I wouldn't have. But at the same time, I know most people are thinking, I don't want gators. So if they know that this is something that could attract them. Now, I've always heard that, especially for gators, that it's more dangerous during their mating season. Is that?
No, it's more dangerous for other alligators. It might be more dangerous for another bull alligator if he wanders into another bull alligators, but it is not more dangerous for people.
Is it just because they're moving around more during that time that you see them more, or what is it?
You're going to see them a lot more typically during their mating season. They're going to be moving around the lakes in different areas. And bull alligators are very territorial. So if you think about it, if you're in the water during the dusk or early morning, he's very territorial. He doesn't know what you are, so you're in his environment. It's just best to stay out of the waters during those times. Not saying, like I said before, don't go water skiing at night or during, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
You'll be safe. Alligators, they don't feed on humans. Also, people think, when they are feeding them, when they're this big, they're
No big
really
deal.
cute.
Right.
And, they keep coming back, but then they don't realize alligators can grow up to 13,
get
14 feet. So, and then he's not that cute, and your dog's missing and things like that. So,
Now, tell me, you've always heard the myths of if you run, if you get up on come walk up on an alligator, if you need to run, you need to run
No.
zigzag.
Zigzags, no.
What should you do, though, in all honesty?
Okay.
If you accidentally, you're not seeking this out, but you come up on an animal like that.
Well, alligators, forget the zigzagging. You can probably outrun an alligator just running straight, just all that. But generally speaking, if you take a look at alligator behavior, alligators are not chasing people. What they're usually trying to do is get back into the water, and a person may be between them and the water. And so it seems like as if maybe they're chasing you, but really
Don't run toward the water.
just
if
get
you
out of their
way,
space. Get out of their space and let them go.
Okay.
And that's, I know we just have, we have such a turnover of new people all the time coming into the state, and I think they just don't really understand a lot of these things. And again, back to the feeding inadvertently, we've spoken to so many people who I think they really just don't understand that putting any sort of food out is going to attract the undesirables, and result in a not so desirable situation.
even not just for alligators, but any type of wildlife,
Well, and-
but
Right,
anything
right.
else.
And I was just about to say, I know that we've talked a little bit about alligators, but there's other types. Bears, I know, there's a lot of people that have issues with bears because of
Right.
same type of thing. Tell us a little bit about our encounters with bears around here.
Our encounters with bears are increasing over the years because the bear population is increasing and the human population is increasing, and so the two are coming upon each other more and more. But again, the bears are not out there seeking people. They're out there seeking food, and again, people are not food, but they provide food, and that's a big problem. It's very hard, again, it seems sometimes, for us to help people make the connection. We were talking about the little baby alligators and how cute they are, and you don't see any harm in feeding them. The same thing with the little cubs. They're just adorable. They're just like little teddy bears, right? So here comes Mama and her two little babies, and Mama is getting into your garbage or your bird feeder or your pet food because it's available. And guess who's learning from Mama? Those little babies. And the sad truth is their future may be determined right then, and their future is pretty bleak, because when they grow up being what we just call garbage bears, they're ultimately going to become a nuisance and a problem to the point that we may end up having to kill them eventually. And we really don't want to do that. So if you think of it, parents try to teach their children to do the things that they do and raise them right, and that's what bears are doing. That's an easy food source. This is really easy. I can raise my little cubs and get a lot of good fattening food right here. Why go anywhere else? Why teach them to forage?
So what should we be doing? If we're in Florida and to not attract the bears, like with our garbage, because it seems like sometimes you just think, like raccoons, you go camping and raccoons can get into just about anything. They can open
Right.
coolers. It doesn't matter what you do. So they seem very resourceful.
Same with black bears.
Yeah.
They're very intelligent. They'll get into coolers, trash cans, all kinds of stuff.
Except they're hundreds of times stronger.
Yeah, they're
And
a lot
so-
bigger than raccoons.
Yeah,
Yes.
somebody will say, well, I put a bungee cord over my trash can top, and it's kept the raccoons out, but the bears keep getting into it. Well, a bungee cord is nothing. There are bear-proof garbage containers, like the big toter things that the waste haulers provide for people. They're not inexpensive. They're $200 plus, and that's expensive for a lot of people. But there are some homemade things you can do. Some caddies people can build to put their trash cans in that the bears can't get into. But we could sit here for the rest of the show and talk about those things, but and we wouldn't finish.
Right.
But what we really recommend, if people have questions, to call us. We have a lot of information on our website.
Okay.
We have plans on how to build some things. But again, what I've been trying to tell people is to, when they see the bears coming into their neighborhood, and we see it more and more in all parts of Central Florida, is right from the beginning, make those bears uncomfortable. And, you know, we have like the air horn here. Would you like us to blow it?
Probably not. I think I've heard one before.
Right, and they're pretty loud. We have these little things that make a noise. They're animal repellents, and they make a noise like a screamer thing, and that will scare some. You know, just go in there and say, go bear, get out of here. Banging pots and pans, a car horn. Those things will work pretty well when the bear is still very skittish and wild. You know, it's just made its way first into the neighborhood, and it's smelling. Once those bears become unafraid, we've had bears, you blow a horn right, and then they're like,
seriously again?
Yeah, and then they might get up and leave. And I mean, and we laugh because it's, you know, it's kind of cute, but in the end, a lot of those bears die.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy of that.
That is the tragedy of
now,
that.
do you? And I know that you said a lot of this is on your website, but I know, like, from my neighborhood, I live. Where I live, I've never heard of any bears. We have alligators because there's a lake close by, but I've never had any bears. Is it something that I need to be proactive in if I have never experienced anything like that? Do I need to be proactive in getting some of these things, or is it just something once there's an issue, then you need to deal with it?
Well, it depends, again, on where you live. Now, if you live right on the edge of the Ocala National Forest or in the forest or even a mile from there, you probably need to just go on and get proactive and start to take the measures to bear-proof your property. You know, if you live, like last year, we had some issues in Tavares with bears coming into areas right in Tavares. At that time, those people needed to react and take care of business right then, because although I think we might have set traps to try to get them out of there, it's hard to catch a bear in a trap when you have some donuts and maybe some sardines, when they've got a plethora, they've got a buffet of garbage and everything else out there. So what's the incentive to walk into this cage? So, you know, at those times when they come in because they're young bears moving, or this time of the year bears are expanding out for their foraging because they are fattening up. 25,000
Now, they can
calories.
get aggressive, though. These bears can be aggressive toward, I mean, there's a reason why we don't want them, right?
Well, again, it's because of their unpredictability. We have had about 3 or 4 instances in the past couple of years in Central Florida that where someone was injured by a bear, and they were scratched, or I think everybody has been scratched, and every single one of them involved garbage and a female bear with her cubs. Every single one of those incidents. So those are like the real triggers. And then you add another trigger to our most recent one, a dog, where somebody was just walking their dog, and it was an unfortunate situation. She was not at fault at all. That just adds another element of danger, because we had in that situation, the sow cub, the female bear, was protecting her cub, which was not a little cub anymore. It was on its way to being independent. So it was a big cub. She's protecting that, and she's protecting her dumpster. That is her food source. And here comes a woman walking her dog, tosses something in the dumpster, turns around, and whoa, there's the bear right there. And now the dog is presenting an aggressor. It turned out pretty well. She did get injured, but she was okay, which shows, I think, that the bears aren't really targeting people, but they are going to protect what they think is theirs. They don't need to think garbage is theirs. That is not theirs. And the only way we can prevent that is from making it inaccessible. We are responsible for that. We can't move bears, because they're just going to, more will come back.
Now, is there any, I know you said that because our bear population is growing, which I think is probably a good sign, but now is it because you know, of all the development in the area where there's less places for them to go? Is that also why we have more encounters with them?
I would say that's part of it. I wouldn't say that's 100% the issue, but Florida, there's thousands, millions of people that move here every year, and it's just expanding. You know, put up subdivisions everywhere. Putting up subdivisions on the outskirts of Ocala National Forest, of course, you're going to have encounters with bears. I mean, that's
right,
just
and I'm not
given.
saying that that's the one thing. I'm just curious.
Well, yeah, I'm just that's
that has to have an impact. I would think if you're, you know,
Loss of
narrowing the
habitat.
space. Yes.
Loss of habitat is like the #1, but it started years ago, and that's
Sure.
one of the reasons the bear population dwindled is through agricultural purposes. So it's not just homes and things like that, because bears are creatures of the forest. And so when we had expanded agricultural practices starting in Florida, and they cleared a lot of land, you know, that was another situation where bears started to lose their habitat. And now we do have habitat, but we have more bears. We've got good habitat, and we've got an increasing population.
Well, let's talk a little bit about snakes and about, I mean, you know, that's one of the things that I always just, a little bit more, you know, of course I haven't had a bear encounter. I do know alligators. I definitely know how to stay away from those. But what do we need to do if we encounter snakes? And
I mean, snakes and alligators and bears, oh my, but all these animals, if you give them their space a lot of times, or you back off, they'll leave you alone. It is unfortunate a lot of times people will step on a rattlesnake, but if a rattlesnake's rattling, that's pretty much a warning, like, hey, just leave me alone, just back away. The same with the cottonmouth, water moccasin. They have a defense posture. They coil up and they'll present their mouth. If you walk away from the snake, it won't bite you. We have a lot of problems, not a lot, but like bright colored snakes. You see Joy brought the coral snake with biting children, because children don't know any better. It's brightly colored. Let's pick it up. But for me, I think if you just leave it alone, whatever snake it is, don't pick it up, you won't get bit. And that is pretty much a fail-safe, unless you're going through the woods and you step on one. So.
And I think we all grew up, at least I did. I grew up with, it's probably more afraid of you than you are of it.
Right.
Leave it alone. And you know, most people who are bitten by snakes, I'm fairly comfortable saying this, are bitten because they're playing around with them.
right.
And you know, the occasional stepping in the woods, or maybe you step out of your boat and there's a cottonmouth right there or something. But for the most part, it's people messing around with them, trying to be funny, trying to catch them. Unfortunately, you know, little kids. I don't know that we have that many instances of little kids being bitten by snakes. I'm sure there are, but it is leave them alone.
I remember I watched a show about snakes one time, and they were showing they were even having people they had like a dummy leg or whatever, and they had them stepping on a snake, and it didn't even do anything. You know, walking by a snake, nothing. And it wasn't until someone picked the snake up, and that was the most dangerous part.
Here's what they do.
Like,
they
I can
pick
do
it up
this. Yes.
like that, and then boom, it comes around.
What if you're at home and you're in your house or I mean in your yard or whatever, and you think you have a poisonous snake there? Is there something that you should do to that? I mean, is it okay to kill the snake?
Yes, there are some snakes that are protected, but the venomous snakes, again, if you leave them alone, they're probably going away. They really don't want to be around. But I understand situations where people maybe have children,
right.
They have pets.
Because I'm afraid, what if they live in my yard somewhere?
Right, and somehow, so you want to get rid of those. And there are animal nuisance animal folks who will come around, not animal control like as in the county, but people who do this for business. And they will come out and remove snakes and things like that, and it's legal for them to do that. If they are removing a venomous snake, they have to have a special permit to do that, to be able to possess one. But even these coral snakes, and I brought this one specifically because every time we go to an event and we have our display set up and we have this snake, it is like the most popular thing there, and everybody tries to remember the rhyme. Can you remember the rhyme?
Or red and black kills Jack or something like that.
Okay, right. And so, you know, then you're like, and then you see one day, and you can't, first of all, remember the rhyme, and then as the snake is moving, you can't even see what colors are touching.
Red and yellow kill a fellow. That's what it is. Red and yellow kill a fellow.
Forget it.
No,
that's the easiest way with a coral snake is to just look at its nose, and its nose is black. Now we have look-alike snakes, like Chad was talking about. We have the scarlet king snake and a scarlet snake. They have the same 3 colors. They're not set up the same in pattern, but those snakes have red noses. And it's that simple.
I really don't want to get close enough to be able to see
And that's
his
what I
nose.
say, you know, if you just stay away from it, it'll probably go
Right.
on its way and you won't have to worry about it.
It will, but again, and I know people, everybody says, I don't want to get that close, but you may just encounter it. Now, like
Sure.
Chad says, get away, but if you're the curious type, like me, and you say, I want to know what that is, you're probably going to be trying to keep an eye on the head,
Right.
so it doesn't
Oh,
come
right.
toward you. And that's why I say it's
Remember
easy.
the
Remember
black nose.
Black nose is the coral snake. But even as deadly as their venom is, and it's a neurotoxin,
Yeah, it's
it
neurotoxin.
attacks your nerves, these are not pit vipers. And the pit vipers are the snakes that have the fangs, like the rattlesnakes and the cottonmouths. Those snakes strike, and then they inject their prey with venom through those fangs. These snakes don't have big fangs. They're not pit vipers. They have a row of teeth, just like any other animal, and they actually have to get on you and gnaw into you. So, in order to inject their venom, so it's not a quick movement. You know, they might even get on there, but they're not interested in that. They're interested in getting away from you. And these snakes mostly live under the leaf litter, so you may encounter them if you have mulch in your gardening or something like that. Just walk away. They're probably going to be gone.
Soon, hopefully, not living in my mulch so that the next time I go in there. Who am I kidding? I don't mulch.
I was going to say, mulch.
Now, what about, that just made me think, we were talking about this with the snakes and killing them. What about any of those nuisance animals, the bigger animals, if they're in your yard? I mean, do you have a right to kill those, like a alligator? Not that I would want to, but do you have a right?
We have a season for alligators, and you actually have to have a permit to kill alligators. So if you kill an alligator in your yard, it's actually a third-degree felony in the state of Florida.
So call somebody instead.
Call Fish and Wildlife or SNAP is the statewide nuisance alligator program, and they'll send an alligator trapper out to remove it if it's in your lawn.
And we have a 24-hour number for reporting things like that that we can give you and you can put up. But we have it for just any kind of wildlife violation or emergency or something like that. But you ask, can people just kill it? Well, and you can elaborate on this, but if you feel like your life is in immediate danger, or with someone at your house, then of course you can protect yourself.
Right.
But
just because it happens to come in your yard, though, you don't have the right.
Right, and you have to understand that with these protected animals, we will be doing an investigation on that and determine, so when we have had people unfortunately claim that this was self-defense and then come to find out after our investigation
not so much.
It wasn't so much. They just didn't.
Well, and unfortunately, what always happens with you all is we have way more that we could talk about, but not enough time to talk about it. And before we go, though, I want to make sure we want to hear the website so that if people do have questions about the bears, and then the number to call. So please.
Okay, yes. If you want to, we have actually a Living with Wildlife section on our website. It's myfwc.com. And then you might have to fish a little bit in there, but it's under Wildlife and Habitats. Hover there, you'll see Living with Wildlife, and there's lots of information right there. Bears, you can go myfwc.com/bear. And you'll go directly to our Living with Bears page.
Okay, and then the phone number, is that just on the website, or is there?
It's on the website, but our Wildlife Alert hotline is toll-free, 888-404-3922. Again, 24-hour, 7 days a week. And if you're reporting a violation or what you think is a violation and we make an arrest, you may be eligible for a reward, and you can remain anonymous.
Well, Joy and Chad, thank you. As always, it was a pleasure. And we've got more stuff for the next time, I guess.
Yeah, we've always got something to talk about, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.